Hello guys. So just a few minutes passed since I ended the previous video. I wanna jump into the RequestIdleCallback function and how it can help us. So I don't really wanna write out every time there's RequestIdleCallback, so I'm a bit lazy, so let's just bind it to equals window requestIdle. Obviously you don't need the window because it's optional, but whatever. So I can console log rec out. Okay, so you can see that we called back the RequestIdleCallback function. So what does it look like? It's a function that takes a function, and the function that you passed in will be called with an argument called deadline. So let's actually try it out. So as I said, it's gonna be called with a function which gonna be called with an argument of deadline, and that's it. So we can log inside func. Okay, as you can see, it got called. So what does it do? So when you call a function as an argument passed to the RequestIdleCallback, that function is going to be called when the browser has time to do things. So it's like, as it says, it's idle. So it's like deferring something to later time with the previous APIs, but in a more precise manner, because it's not random or not managed by some arbitrary number when to execute a function, but it's managed by the browser instead, when the browser knows that it has some spare time. And it turns out that actually you can specify how much time you think you might need, and only execute things that when the time that you have before the next thing that the browser needs to do is actually greater than the time you think that the function actually can take. So yeah, it might be a bit complicated, but just let me tell you what I mean by that. So this deadline has a field called, which is a function, so deadline time remaining, and that is being updated on every time you call it. So it's not just like static. So if I call it here, it's gonna yield a different result if I call it a few lines below. So it gives you the most up-to-date value of how much time you've got till the browser is gonna be busy again. So you can say that, okay, if it's more than 1 milliseconds, then do something, otherwise don't bother. Like, just keep and I don't want to block the main thread. So like, you can do something if it's like this, then console log things out. Otherwise, I don't want to interrupt the like DOM paintings or UI even things, or whatever you want to call it. So that's pretty good way to do things. So we can. Okay, so inside function. So it meant that we have time. So that was called inside the RequestIdleCallback, and also we checked that how much is the time remaining. So we can even call it like that. We can even console log this out. Console log deadline time remaining. We can console log this here, and we can go as you can see, it resulted two different functions, right? So the first time you called it, it had more time, obviously, as in time passed. It was the second stuff. It had less time before the browser had something important to do. I mean, it makes sense. But that thing actually means that if you can check it multiple times, that means if you can slice up your work into little chunks, then you can check if you have time after every chunk's been done and only continue if you have time, otherwise just stop the execution. And the good part about it is that you can give back the control either like this, that if deadline time remaining is greater than 1, do this, and just if you don't have time, just stop doing whatever you do. Or you can specify it in a different way, which is a recursive call. So you can call requestIdleCallback inside requestIdleCallback, which basically means, okay, now I did not have time, but call this thing again, so the next time I have time, execute it. So it's like constantly just asking, okay, do I have time? No. Okay, call this recursively, and the function executes itself and checks, do I have time now? Yes. Okay, if I have time, then just execute whatever is inside the if statement or while statement, and that keeps repeating until the piece of work is done and the browser was able to give you enough time on the main thread to execute your things. So the way to do that is, if we just want to come back on so yeah, if we're gonna come back to our little example, we know that if we press start work, I can't change the playground's background color, right? Not for a while. Okay, so let's try to use this requestIdleCallback. So instead of calling expensive calculation, we can call requestIdleCallback, and now we know that the function you pass in will be called with the deadline argument, so I can access deadline here. And what I can do, as I said, is now you can check, okay, iteration count needs to be higher than 0, because iteration count is basically the number of iterations you need to go through. I also can say that I want to make sure that I have enough time before the next crucial thing the browser needs to do. So I just need to call time remaining is greater than 1, and only bother with executing these things if due. If not, then just call it again with expensive calculation. And just remember that this time remaining is constantly being updated. So if it returns a value that is less than 1 at some time, it doesn't mean that the next time it will be less than 1 again. So we're just simply slicing up our little work. Now the thing is that because of the content, the constant context switching, it's gonna be much more expensive. But I hope that it will demonstrate what I want it to do. Okay, yeah, so as you can see now, if I click on start work and I click on handle some user interaction, immediately does the job. So we can actually console, which is gonna make it even more slower, but our main point is just simply trying to have a grasp of what the thing is doing. Okay, as you can see, it started doing the job. It's really slow. So first of all, it doesn't have that much time, right? Only 1 millisecond is allowed. I mean, it has a lot of time. Sorry, it's the other way around. But still, it needs to be aware that a user interaction can happen anytime. So it's doing its job, and if I click on handle some user interaction, then it responds immediately. Okay. So I think you get the point why this is a good thing. So now, obviously it's a really expensive calculation, so we can turn it down by a lot. So let's name it here. Yeah, just let's console log it out. I think it's like much faster now. Most of the calculation is not gonna be that expensive, but for showcasing you see it's still doing its job, but it handles the event instantaneously. And now we're done. Yeah, so the takeaway from this is it only will be executed when there is some time for the browser to execute the function body. And when you call it recursively, it just simply you passing it again until the iteration count hits 0 and everything is done. So yeah, that's it.